Obviously the big changes are just how fans are consuming the music. They're not running to CD stores to get the signed, merch per se. Although I do.
So welcome to the show, Cheryl B. I forgot this right. Engelhardt.
Engelhardt. Yes, you got it.
So you've so you've been creating music ever since you can remember. How
Yeah.
have you seen the music industry change over the years since you first started?
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't even say I was in the music industry the first 20 years I was creating the music, just kind of in my own little bubble. But since actually being in the industry, obviously the big changes are just how fans are consuming the music. They're not running to CD stores to get the signed, merch per se. Although I do see that is something that happens at live shows because there's that energy of the being in the moment and the nostalgia and the take a souvenir away. But so that's the obvious thing. I really think that there are some things that are sticking around for the long haul. I mean, I've had an email list for almost 20 years, and the fans that are on that list, most of them came early from when I was performing live a lot, and they've just stuck around. Email is still everyone needs an email in order to even get on TikTok. You need an email to sign up. Like it's not going anywhere. I think that streaming, of course, has changed a lot of things, and maybe for the worst in terms of payment. There are a lot more easier ways to put your music into libraries and licensing, like the digital age. I think there's advantages and disadvantages, but I think that the change of being able to easily upload and not need so much physical stuff along the throughout the process of creating and distributing music. I think that's probably the biggest change.
It's quite interesting you say about the change in music and how it's all been streamed because I seen your Instagram video about what Daniel Ek, the CEO of Spotify, said. I was going to save this for later, but since we're on this topic, what's your opinion on what he said? For those who don't know, he basically said music is free and cheap to make.
Yeah. Well, I replied. I don't even remember what I replied with, but even in my most inexpensive endeavor, where I created, produced, mixed, I didn't use a studio because I was on a train trip and created this album there. Even in the like what seems to be a low cost product, the computer I had, the headphones I had, the amount of training I've had, and the free internships, just time equals money alone. The education, all my other albums that got me to be able to produce that album, and that album, ironically, was also nominated for a Grammy. So it's like, we're not talking about crap quality here. It still cost me, and then promoting it and all of my website hosts, and like, what are your costs just year over year just to have all this stuff living. I'm like, we're definitely in the high five figures, if no, sorry, high four figures. Like we're on an inexpensive. So I basically said, like, listen, even on my most inexpensive album, this is like such a false statement. It's not anywhere near true. My time, my schooling, the equipment that I've used, even when I do something 100% myself. So I basically said, you're wrong. And actually, I think Forbes grabbed that quote and was highlighted it a little bit, which was kind of fun. But he got a lot of backlash for that because it's just not true. And we think of making an album as like you go in a studio and you're spending tens of thousands of dollars. And I have friends that hire orchestras and they have backers and things like that. And like you could be pushing six figures for a really, really high end album. And like, then there's my ambient in the box, meaning just not using recording equipment, just using what's in, but the plugins, like there's never going to be a zero cost for music. Like even if it was someone that never took a lesson, figured it out themselves, if they're borrowing gear, at some point there is a time, effort, talent, and yeah, sure, transactional gear costs as well. But it's not so black and white.
I actually did a bit of music after uni because I just was trying to figure, the stereotypical "I've left uni now, I'm going to figure myself out" kind of thing. But I know exactly what you mean. Even with the equipment I was using at the time, it was, well, I'm free.
Yeah.
I think I was I actually listened to Daniel Ek's episode on Diary of CEO podcast, and I just was thinking, this guy's not engaging. How has he managed to capture the world with music? I probably shot any opportunity of him coming on now, but I'm thinking,
Yeah, I mean, it's just a matter of being in touch with your industry and in touch with the majority of the industry. And like, there's majority of the money makers, but then there's the majority of the people in the industry, and they're not the same. And I think it would be wise for someone in a position like that to be in touch with both, and not just the one that's bringing in the most dollars, the big labels or big artists.
how would you, to use your, I hope I've just remembered this correctly, to use your own words, how would you describe the people within the music industry?
I think that, I mean, I think the music industry is incredibly diverse. I think that there is the maybe one of the reasons for that is because it is such a way to be an outlet for all sorts of personal journeys, and everyone's got a story to tell. And if you've, you know, got the muse inside you, it's a great place to be. I think that there's a lot of different levels and sort of business things wrapped up in politics in some areas. I mean, we've got the record labels and the big label artists, and then we've got the record label artists that are, fighting with the other label artists to get attention. And I've heard, horror stories of people that think they're all done and all set because they got signed to a label, and then they just never their works never see the light of day, and they lose all this control. So there's a lot of different sides of it. And then of course there's the independent artist community, the indie labels, the smaller labels, but then artists that are also 100% independent like myself, and just doing the hustle and networking and taking small opportunities and trying to make them into bigger ones.
What is it like to be 100% indie if all the big labels are fighting amongst themselves for other artists? Because you reminded me of a story or something I heard about Taylor Swift, where she's having to redo all her old songs purely because her records label company own all the rights.
Right. So they owned her masters. And so she said, well, in the master is just the recording. It's not the composition. So she's like, I'll take my compositions and then I'll go re-record them, thus creating new masters. And then she can release. So when you see Taylor's version, that basically means it's her ownership. And so we're paying her versus paying a record label who would then pay her like a tiny percentage. And she's got the power now to do that and to shut big things down, which is incredible. And she started that a couple of years ago for sure. And I think it's a great move. And I think it's a move that a lot of people that feel stuck in labels could and maybe even should do. But again, the cost of recording, and you want to record a whole album that you already recorded that you're super happy with and that you love, just to be able to release it, there is a cost, so.
And what is that cost?
Depends on what the music is and who they need to hire and how much studio time they need, and if the arrangement with musicians that they're playing with, and engineers and master engineers, and all of these people get paid, and producers and whatnot. And then there's just sending it out, the distributing. If your fan base loves CDs or records, then you're going to be spending money up front to print those so that you can sell them later. So there's a whole slew of different costs that can come into that.
So you mentioned earlier about being entirely independent. What's it like to be entirely independent within the music industry? Because, like you said, with all the costs, it can't, logistically speaking, it can't be easy, especially when you made your own Grammy nominated album.
I mean, I think that's kind of key to why I stay independent, is because I do have training in mixing and producing, and so I can do a lot of the stuff myself. I used to hire out, especially when I was doing more pop music, but because I can create and produce and mix, it lowers the costs for me. So it's more incentive to stay independent and keep a bigger bigger piece of the pie. Not to say that if the right deal and a collaboration and a company really got behind me, I wouldn't. I'm not saying I'm like anti-record label. I just think that there's an antiquated model that is out there, and I know that there are some companies that are trying to create something new so that it is a win-win for everybody. But yeah, as an independent, it's for me. I like having the control. But I also then get to pick my collaborators, and I have had to be really mindful to say, even though I'm an independent artist, I don't need to be a lone wolf artist. And most artists that I coach, musicians as well, and a lot of musicians that I coach think that because they can do a lot of this stuff and they do their graphics and they do all this stuff, that they have to do it all alone. And I really encourage people to not. I mean, the music industry is a people industry. We are creating, when you're in it for a business, there are some people that are creating as a hobby, which is great, but I'm speaking about like the business side of it. We are creating for an audience, and that means we need other people to know about us and to know, like, and trust and love us. And so to be a lone wolf and then come out of your cave and say, I have something, go buy it, like, it doesn't work. Like, there has to be a constant collaboration, constant being in the mode of being in a people business. And so it's easy to get into the bubble of lone wolf, but a lot of us really do love being around people and want to be with people and want to make a difference for people. So we have to remember that even in the process, not just in the selling of the music, in the process, it's important to find collaborators and partners and cheerleaders and engage with your fan base however you can, to not go into that sort of lonely, isolated bubble where usually no good happens there.
Would you describe that as more of a lone wolf type of situation where they?
Yeah, that's literally what it is, to not lone wolf it. Yeah.
And because of your freedom and flexibility of being an independent artist, you made The Passenger, which was the Grammy, we use my own words, Grammy award winning. No, was it? Did it win an award?
It's a Grammy nominated album. Yeah.
Saying winning sounds a lot better, I must say. But did it win?
No, it didn't win. It was one of 5 that was nominated in the New Age ambient chant category.
What inspired you to make The Passenger? Because I know part of it was in inspiration to your dearly, can I say his name?
Yeah,
dearly departed friend Kevin. Apologies.
Archambault. It's a tricky one.
I don't want to butcher it. Because, yeah, like I said. But was there any other inspiration?
The inspiration for The Passenger, well, yes. It was during COVID, and Kevin was my best friend and a collaborator. We wrote a musical together that we had put up just before COVID hit, The Boiler Room Girls, based on a Kennedy conspiracy of the 60s. And we were working on it. And then COVID hit, and he also found out he had stage 4 cancer. And so a year and a half went by, and we kept working on it. And then he ended up, so he and I had done a lot of work together. He had directed a bunch of musicals in this community theater, and I was the musical director. So we worked together in a lot of different capacities. So he passed away in January 2022, just when COVID was starting to come out. And I had asked him to be my date for the Grammys that were supposed to be in February, but the Grammys got moved because of COVID to April. And I was thinking that it would be fun to take a train out from New York to Los Angeles for the Grammys. And he passed away. I already had the train ticket. The Grammys got moved. So I was like, you know what? I'm just going to go anyway. And so that was 2 weeks later. I got on the train 2 weeks after he passed away. So I went across the country in the middle of January, end of January, through the Rocky Mountains. And I mean, it was incredible. Like, this amount of snow, and the Colorado River was frozen. There's herds of elk running along it, like running along the train. Like, it was really magical. It was exhausting because it's impossible to sleep because the train is so loud and the horns are going all night long when you're crossing roads and things. But I brought my little teeny keyboard and a bunch of different headphones, and I was like, let's just see what comes out. And I didn't prep anything. I didn't get sessions ready. I didn't, find any sounds that I liked. I just opened the computer once I was on the train, and I was really committed to just having the entire, if I could produce anything, I didn't know if I was going to be able to do this, but if I was going to produce anything, it would be start to finish done on the train. And I would mix it at home, but like the creating the songs, the all of the production, the sounds, everything would be in there the whole train ride. And in the first 26 hours, I think I had 3 songs done. And so it was just flowing. It just came out. So I knew, I was like, okay, I think this is going to work.
How many songs did you make for that?
I made 13, but there's 10 on the album. Yeah, there were a couple that I was like, I don't know what I was thinking about. I must have been like googly eyed in the middle of the night. So a couple did not make it.
I heard that's quite a common practice in the music industry where artists will make. I heard one of someone who, I forget his name, he made 25 songs. But when it came to the actual album release, I think he had 11. But that helped quite a bit because I believe it won awards. It did really well for the guy in the end, is my point.
Yeah, I think it's kind of like process of elimination of like you get some turds with the nuggets of gold, you know, so you sort of, it's like you're sifting for gold and you get the rocks and you're like, all right, here's the ones that are going to stick. I actually don't do that a lot when I go out, and especially with my pop albums, but in my new age albums, I haven't done that. But I think for this process, I was really just like banging it out, and I wasn't going back, and I wasn't self correcting, like overcorrecting too much in editing. So I think the 3 that I didn't put on, they weren't even like really complete pieces. I think I had started them and I was debating if I wanted to like extend them, but yeah, in the end it was just the 10. I think 10. Yeah.
I thought you said 11.
Maybe it was 11.
Oh no, I think it was me who said 11.
I think it was 10. Yeah, I think it was 10.
You mentioned earlier that you coach musicians as well. What do musicians come to you for help with?
Yeah, I am kind of known as like a systems person, meaning if they are struggling with just what's next, like I work with musicians that are not just starting out. So they probably have an album out, maybe they've toured, and they are thinking, okay, I've done everything I need to do. Now what? And what I like to look at is, what are the systems you have in place? How do you work with a calendar to manage your time? How's your email system set up? What's your website doing? How's your branding? What's your social media system? How do you pitch to get gigs? And usually when something's not working, there is a system to create or optimize. So I kind of go through everything that they think they have set up, and then I look at what's missing, and we sort of fill in the blanks there. A lot of times the work that I end up doing is a little more life coach, trauma informed work that I'm certified in, talking about past things that didn't go well, that like even some childhood traumas or effects that parents had on that are actually blocking them, some, you know, stuck ways of being that they thought had to be true that aren't actually true. So we sort of dig into some of those untruths and do a little mindset work, and end up coming out with clearing a little bit of space so that they can bring in something new. A lot of people try to pile new goals, and they want to manifest, or they want to do this on top of an already full plate. There's actually no room. Even if they got that goal, they wouldn't be able to keep it and hold it. So we try to build a body and build a life and build a schedule that allows for new things to come in. So that usually means clearing out some stuff that's not working, or that hasn't been serving them, or that's been sucking their energy.
What are the more typical things you work with musicians on? So is it the music? Is it the albums? Is it something inside them?
Yeah, so I don't do too much work with their creativity. I usually don't even listen to my clients' music because I that's not my job. I am not a critique of music. I like what I like, and I'm not a label. And so what my job really is to listen for what they want, and then figure out what's stopping them from having that. And that can be different for a lot of musicians. For many musicians, they want to create financial sustainability with their music, which, so for some people, they're going after licensing. So we're working on how do you craft your pitches? Where else could you look? Kind of taking the blinders off. If they've sort of been like, I've been doing this, I'm like, cool, what about doing this? So I come up with new ideas and I hold them accountable. I make sure that they're doing the work effectively with velocity. Other times musicians are they want to grow their fan base. They want to have a bigger impact. Or they want to, a lot of people that I work with are also teachers or have some other sort of side business, like they run a yoga studio. I have someone that like runs a nonprofit and wants to like incorporate the music. So it's kind of just like, how do we make your life look the way you want it to, and work in the creative stuff as well as whatever else you've got going on.
I'm just trying to picture the example you just give with I want to create, well, the person wants to create, incorporate their music with the non-profit. I'm just trying to picture how that would.
I mean, there's a lot of actually have a couple of clients that are in similar situations. One specifically works with children, and so she has children's music, and the songs are based on the curriculum that she has developed for this nonprofit for local student centers and things like that. So that's one way. Another woman that I've worked with is she's like an energy healer, and so she's kind of got like meditative kind of music that she works into the nonprofit's programming. Yeah, I think there's a lot of different ways that people could bring in their music into their life, but those are two examples that I've seen actually really work well.
Yeah, I just pictured, oh yeah, that does make sense to have meditation music. I just could only imagine what heavy metal would sound like during those sessions.
Probably a little different. Maybe there's a little different purpose of having heavy metal play. If you're like trying to release some big energies, totally valid.
Really quickly, if you enjoy my conversation with Cheryl B. Engelhardt about the music industry and musicians in general, then please like, comment, and subscribe. That will be greatly appreciated. Alright, now back to the episode. How do you identify the steps that your clients need to take to get the results they want? Because they, like you said, they might come to you knowing what they want, but they might not know how to get there. I've had that problem with my life a few times.
Yeah. If they come knowing what they want, that's great. A lot of the time people think they know what they want, and then it's actually something else. So the first thing I do is get really clear, is this actually the thing you want? Or is this something that your parents wanted for you, or that the industry said you should have? Or so we just get like what's really true for them. So that's clear. The next thing that I do, I kind of have a framework that I work within, which is that, so for some people, they have like a really big like life goal, and that could be like winning a Grammy, or it could be, making $250,000 a year from their music, right? So that means that if they're only making, let's say they're making $30,000 a year from music, there's a couple steps in between. So we're not going to go from like 30 to 250. The work you're going to do to hit $50,000 a year is different than the work that will get you eventually to that 250. So I look at what's the next milestone. I call it a champagne win, meaning let's pick a goal that's sort of semi near future. So, 2 to 6 months out, that is in line with, that's on the path to getting the bigger goal. And it's a really clear, obvious goal such that when you hit it, everyone around you knows to break out the champagne. So some musicians say, well, I want more fans. And I'm like, okay, cool. So if I sign up for your email list, are we breaking out the champagne? Like, is that more fans with one person? Or is it a specific number? It's 1,000 new people on your email list by November 1st, right? Like, then we know, okay, is it November 1st? Did we get 1,000? Cool, we're breaking out the champagne, or we're not. We just get that data. So that's the first thing I do, is like, if they have a really big, like, okay, I know what I want for my life, and it's a really big, a little bit far off thing, I'm like, great, let's go after that. Let's work backwards. What are some things we need to hit first? And for people that don't have something really big like that, I'm like, what would feel really good in 3 months if you're like, oh, the last 3 months were awesome because I accomplished X. And so we get to what is X. And from there, we can create an action plan. But we've got to have our sight on something, or else we're just going to sort of do the things we think we should do, spin our wheels, and not really feel any sort of purpose or direction.
Yeah, because you could end up just chasing your own tail.
Yeah, totally.
You've said that musicians should have 3 systems in place to help them to achieve their goals. One is a calendar system, another is an email, another one's accountability. 2 questions to that. First, why? And second, can other people who aren't musicians use them?
Oh, totally. I have coached other people. I focus on musicians just because that's my area of expertise. And a lot of people see my successes as an independent artist and are like, how did you do that? Oh, you also happen to be a coach. Cool, let's talk. So, but I have worked with people completely outside of the music industry. And a lot of this stuff is the same for anyone that's creating something from nothing, that is so that could be a business. So entrepreneurs, that could be another kind of art form. But the idea, and I don't think these are the only three systems. Those are three examples I used of systems, but they're great. I think a calendar system is paramount. And I actually tell all my clients to not have to-do lists. The second you think of something that you need to do, whether it's send an email or edit a video, like a bigger project, it should go right into your calendar as an event, so that you're treating your calendar it's not just for other people, like your dentist appointments or when you have to show up on a podcast or you have a coffee date. Like those are all for other people. So one of my first questions to my clients is your calendar yours? Or is it everybody else's? And usually it's everybody else's. So we start to use the calendar as a tool and a structure that can support you, which means you have to put things that are for you in it. To-do list, anything that's on a to-do list that's sort of taking up space. We like to put it into time and space. Once it's in a calendar, then it actually exists somewhere and you don't have to think about it until that time. Okay, Friday, 2:00, I'm supposed to send this email, comes up, and then you have to do it, right? There's a whole other level of integrity and relationship with your calendar such that you just do it. So that system is really important, and it clears up a lot of energy and actually a lot of time, which is ironic. The more parameters you have with a calendar, the more free time you get. But time and time again, like I blow my clients' minds. Like they'll come back a week later, like, oh my God, I started doing the to-do list into the calendar thing, and I can't, like, how do I have more time? Like, I don't even understand it. There's something really cool about it. So that's the why for the calendar system. It's just to get your life in one place so that it's not on a napkin we're getting organized. Email, for anyone that has a client base or an audience or fan base, whatever you want to call it, email is still across industries the number one way to sell. People are not on social media most of the time to do transactions. When they're on their email, they're more likely to pull out a credit card. They're more likely to do the thing you're asking to do. Right now, social media is a dopamine hit source. So we're going to social media to feel something. Most of the time, I'm saying this is not like, black and white here. So to rely exclusively on selling your music, telling people to follow you on Spotify, making sales on social media is not going to be effective. You're going to be people are 9 times more likely to buy something from one email than they are from one social post. And you also don't have to rely on the algorithms and the timing and like hoping that everyone sees it email is just a smart way to be doing business if you have any element of transaction, which if you're a business, you do. So that's why email, I think, is really important. And I have programs and PDFs and all sorts of things I've created because I think that is an underutilized sort of like untapped ATM for people if they knew how to do it correctly. So email, and then accountability was the third system. I think there's been studies that show when you share a goal out loud, you're like 35% or something, 35% more likely to achieve the goal. But when you share updates, you're 67% more likely to achieve the goal just by sharing it. So there is actual evidence that says that when you speak a goal out loud, you're more likely to achieve it. Like, why would you not do that? And I think it's even more powerful when you speak it to someone who's going to check in on you and who's going to be cheering for you and who's going to be holding space for, okay, this block might come up, but we're going to power through it, or like how we're going to handle that. Which is, why I think it's really important to invest in a coach and to work with coaches that are really going to be your cheerleader and not just someone who's like, yeah, whatever. But there's evidence that it doesn't really matter who you share it to, as long as you're saying it out loud and you're sharing updates. It's really powerful.
There is some evidence to suggest that if you share your goal too much, you actually don't achieve it, because how's it go again? The brain will produce a dopamine for you, well, for the fact that it thinks you've achieved a goal when you haven't. So what you can sometimes have is this kind of loop where you say you're going to do something, you keep saying it over and over again, but eventually you don't do it because the brain's already kits the dopamine or the chemicals needed to tell you that you've achieved it, when in reality you haven't. It's still a thought in your mind.
I've never seen those studies. I have seen all the work that Joe Dispenza has done, which is where you imagine the thing is already done. Like you already have the Grammy, you already have the $100,000 a year, and the evidence shows that you're aligning your brain with the feeling of having achieved that, and that creates cohesion, like sort of in the field, and you're pulling in that future. So you're more likely to then take actions aligned with that because you know what that feeling is, and so you're going to act to it. So that I've only seen that scientific evidence that's pretty much the opposite of what you're saying, but I haven't seen the study. I'd be curious to see that. I mean, getting a dopamine hit, like dopamine hits are real quick, right? Versus sitting in an emotion of having done it, where you're actually pulling that future to you and then more likely to take actions to achieve that. That's less of a dopamine hit than more of a sort of a shift in your energy state and your almost on a cellular level. But I can't speak to the study that you're speaking to, because I haven't seen it.
Oh, I didn't mean to paint it as a study. I just heard it from other people to make it clear. But I heard it from Ryan Holiday, who's considered a Stoic, and I heard what he said aligns with what I listened to an audiobook. I'm like, oh, okay, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, I just know that there's a lot of very strong evidence in sharing a goal and your progress in helping you move forward with it. And it comes back to the accountability structure, where when you have someone else, you sort of set it, you're like, we're gonna go do it, right? Like that in and of itself can sort of kick someone into action versus not sharing it at all. And I've seen memes and things like that on Instagram where it's like, be the silent, like just be the doer, just do the thing, and like you don't have to talk about your goals at all. And I'm like, no, scream your goals from the rooftop. The only reason people don't share their goals, in my experience, after coaching hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people don't share their goals that they have because they are afraid that they won't hit it, and they're afraid that they will feel disappointed or shame. And the coaching that I give them is, you are able to handle your own disappointment and your own shame. You can handle, like, you're basically not sharing this, not taking action because you're afraid of your potential future emotions. Like, are you so scary? Your emotions are so scary that you're not going to go after this thing. Like, there's a little ego involved in that for sure. But once people frame it that way, are like, oh, am I afraid of my own disappointment? Like, yeah, it sucks to feel disappointed. It sucks to maybe feel shame if I said I was going to do this. I told my fans, I'm like, I'm getting on this train and I'm going to try to make an album. I have no idea. I've never made an ambient album, A, by myself, B, in 5 days, C, on a moving vehicle. So like, I don't know, but I was like, I'm going to do this and I'm going to take videos and I'm going to bring you along the journey. And it was a way for my fans to, I mean, they probably had the popcorn out, like, how's this going to go? You know? And like getting a Grammy nomination was like, because I brought them in from the beginning, like that was such a win for my fans. Like to be part of that, like, oh my God, like we did not think this was going to go this direction. Like I didn't. So the pleasant surprises come with when you are vulnerable and just share, despite what could potentially happen. Like we don't have to have it all.
I've personally found that you tend to figure it out along the way, not from the word go.
Absolutely. Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
With the goal sharing and the fear of rejection, shame, all of that, this is from an entrepreneur called Alex Hormozy, who says poor people don't take action because they're afraid of what other poor people will say if they achieve their financial business or goals. It's like you're afraid of the comparison from others, or in your example's case, you're afraid of the feelings of your future emotions.
Yeah. I mean, shame and comparison and judgment from other people can be a very big driver to do something or to not do something. And the second you get really aware of, am I taking this action or not taking this action because of something that feels aligned for me or because of what I'm afraid of from other people, you get a lot of power back when you can distinguish that. And you can say, oh, well, I'm afraid of being judged. So do I want that to drive my life? Probably not. It can be scary to move past it, but it's always worth it.
Yeah, it's fight or flight, isn't it?
It is definitely a trauma response. Yeah, fight, flight, freeze, or appease are the 4 different versions of that, but yeah,
Good too.
you're trained, like something happened when you're really, really little and you develop this fight or flight response, this a trauma response. Like, it could be like your mom left you, like you got lost from in the store when you were a little kid. You couldn't find your mom. And maybe you're like, that will never happen again. So like you go on through the rest of your life, like being a little clingy, right? So you're like fighting for the mom, like you're fighting for the attention, you'll fight for it. And then we also know that like something bad happens, you flee, you run away, right? Like maybe a scary dog came into the yard and you learn to just like run. Then there's the freeze, which is just like, I don't do anything, I'm just gonna like move. Or there's the appease, like, hey, I can make it better. And those are my people pleasers, right? Like that's how we develop the like, you're making someone else comfortable, but at the cost of your comfort. That's usually what the appease means. So there's four. We've heard for decades the fight or flight, but it's fight, flight, freeze, or appease. Some people call it fawn, but I say appease because it rhymes. Yeah, like you fawn over someone, like you sort of cater to them and their needs, and like put yours on the back burner.
Yeah, I'm not sure whether I like the word fawn either.
Just explains it. You're appeasing someone to try to get them to off or whatever it is.
You on your own podcast yourself called the Music Business Breakthrough Podcast.
Yep.
What's it like to run your own? Well, this is coming from a podcast. Well, podcaster themselves, but what's it like to run your own solo podcast?
It's fun. I mean, I'm on my 6th season. The first couple seasons were interviews with other music business experts, a lot of people that ran music companies or platforms or things. And it was called Key Conversations back then because my company for musicians is in the key of success. So I had the key theme and it was really conversational. And then I shifted to talking to other musicians and coaching them on the podcast and sort of letting those conversations show other musicians that were listening that they're not alone, that they could get coaching out of the conversation I was having. And then COVID happened and I paused the podcast so that I could really focus on my membership. Because I had about 200 people, 200 musicians that were all like, oh my God, I was gigging and now I can't. So it was like, I went live every single day for 3 months straight on Zoom with them. When normally the membership was like, it was once a month Zoom. So I really wanted to focus in on helping them pivot and do really well in COVID. And a lot of them did. Like they made more money than they ever had because they did Facebook Lives and they didn't have to travel. They didn't have tour costs. And so I just recently was like, I need to get back into this. And so this season is it's 17 episodes, the 6th season. I think we're on episode 4 at the time of recording this. And it's just me talking and really laying out some of my sort of higher level distinctions that I give my coaching clients, this idea of structures, some frameworks, really digging into time management on like a higher level. Like not everyone will be ready to hear this stuff. Some people are just going to be starting and they're going to be like, whoa, this is way too advanced. But I'm really excited to cater to the musicians. There's so much stuff out there for musicians that are just starting out. There are so many free blogs and YouTube tutorials and like every music company has their like basic 101, how to grow your fans, how to do social media. I'm really interested in those people that kind of get to the 400 level, like the juniors and seniors in college that kind of like fall through the cracks. I'm really interested in working with them and saying, no, you don't give up. Like, I know you've come really far and like, you've tried all the things, but like the stuff that's out there right now isn't helping. Let's go here. Let's go a little bit deeper. Let's talk about your past. Let's talk about the stuff you tried. Let's talk about your self-worth. Let's talk about, different time management, release strategies, higher level stuff that someone just starting out probably wouldn't align with.
How do you help people who are just starting out with your music coaching and podcast? Just
finally, I have a couple the podcast is one of those resources where they can sort of start to listen and be like, oh yeah, this is like totally what I need. I think in the first couple episodes of this season, they'll know. You can kind of hear the framework that I present and it really lands with most people, or it's a little too advanced. Then I have a PDF that's really valuable. It's called Mastering Email, the Musician's Untapped ATM, and it kind of outlines the 6 stages. And stage stages is the acronym I use of email marketing, from just the strategy to technology, awareness, gathering emails, engaging, how to write the emails, and how to sell. So that PDF is like a really good resource that's pretty quick to consume. And so I put that link pretty much anywhere, and people can kind of get a taste of like what kind of material I create, and they can see, okay, I want to dig in a little bit more. And then everything I do talk about Amplify, which is my mastermind for musicians. And that is really where they get hot seat coaching. We have 2 calls a month, and there's full on work days. We have one this Friday where it's 9 to 5. We're on Zoom all day long, and I prompt them and I say, okay, we're doing a 10-minute turbo workshop. And people are doing work that they need to do. I'm not teaching anything, but I'm giving them different ways to work. And then we have like 45-minute sort of cleanup sessions where we finish little things that we started that never finished, and just a lot of productivity mindset stuff, and a lot of perks come with Amplify. So that's usually the way, and it's pretty low cost. It's like $49 a month to just get in, get accountability. They get first access to my retreat, which is a high-end luxury retreat that I run every May. So yeah, there's a lot of ways to kind of like dip your toe into working with me, and then figure out, oh yeah, this is the kind of energy I want, this is the kind of accountability I want, and this is the kind of coach I want that has this kind of career under her belt, that gets the industry as much as she kind of can get me as a coach. At least that's what I hope.
And what do you get about the industry from a knowledge expertise standpoint?
What do I get?
Like your understanding.
I mean, my mission is to alter how 100,000 musicians work at their careers so that they get results that they really want. And so the more musicians I'm able to work with or speak in front of or have access to, the bigger difference I feel like I can make. And the other thing that I've always done is I've always been really vulnerable in sharing what I'm up to as a musician. So I'm not just this like marketing guru that's trying to like teach something that I did once 20 years ago, and now I'm, telling you how I did it. Like, I'm still literally every day working on my own music career. And I really am committed to showing people what's possible. And there are now people that are like, I never knew that a Grammy could be something that I could go after. I never knew that an independent artist could, could work like this, or could live in a place like this, or could make an income doing this, so I really like to use myself as, here's what's possible. Because once you see what's possible, then it's in your realm. It suddenly becomes possible.
So you like to be more of an inspiration then?
That's definitely part of it, yeah.
What's the other part?
I think the actual, like, actionable, implementable, like, action taking is that's what's going to get people results. So like, to be an inspiration is great, but if it's not backed with, here's something that you can do, here's a plan that's going to end up in somewhere that you're really psyched about, then the inspiration doesn't matter.
Cheryl B, Engelhardt, everyone. Where can people find you if they want to learn more about you?
My website is cbemusic.com, and that CBE Music is also my Instagram and my TikTok handle. And if you're a musician, it's easy to find me on those sites as well.
I hope you enjoyed that episode of Cheryl B, Engelhardt, but want to see a different episode from someone else within the music industry. Then I have KC Sounds right here, who is a music producer. But if you want to watch an episode with someone completely different, then I've got Justin Klein, who is a fitness trainer for parents. Until next time, see you then.